When we use space to organise our understanding of knowledge, kind of spatial epistemology if you like, we tend to use the dimensions of space in different ways, and in addition to that there are certain features about the different dimensions which again make them different from one another and make them usable in certain very specific ways. We use horizontality quite a lot. Horizontality is, as you might guess, the horizontal dimension, and it stretches from oneself out horizontally in front of oneself, predominantly, although there are entailments which involve behind and to the side, but predominantly the dimension of knowledge that operates along the horizontal stretches out in front of oneself. The clearest example of that dimension being put into a kind of paradigmatic model is Michael Polanyi in his use of the tacit dimension and personal knowledge. He talks about it, but it's in some of his writing he overtly uses the term distal and proximal to indicate different understandings or different ways of knowing, different types of knowledge possibly, different epistemologies. Proximal knowledge is that which is close, distal knowledge is that which is distant, and closeness and distance are features of this horizontal dimension. The tacit dimension is what Polanyi refers to, but it's understood horizontally. But as I said, there are that horizontal dimension isn't featureless. It's not simply spatial. There are distinct landmarks in it at which the ontology of knowledge, or the ontology as a kind of understanding, changes quite distinctly and dramatically. And the key landmarks, I think, are firstly the horizon. So here I am standing in space, I'm looking out, and notionally I can see a horizon somewhere in front of me, and that is the kind of terminus for the horizontal dimension. Kind of terminus, I say, because we do postulate about what might be beyond that horizon, but there is a sense in which the limits of one's knowledge are represented imaginatively using this horizontal dimension as terminating at the horizon. So that's one landmark. The second key landmark, I would suggest, is the orbit of the arms. And I was reading recently, I think, or maybe it's a video I was watching, but apparently there's even that in the real world, entities which fall within the orbit of our arms are actually processed differently, neurologically speaking. And I think the same is true metaphorically or imaginatively, poetically if you like, in terms of this horizontal dimension. So in addition to the horizon marking a significant landmark in horizontal epistemology, there's a particular point about 2 feet out at which knowledge falls within the orbit of one's arms, as I say. Perhaps one way of understanding that bit, I think, is to do with being able to grasp it. There's a different kind of understanding takes place, or at least we're trying to posit a form of knowing which involves a different understanding when we characterize that knowing as falling within this particular region. So again, that's a significant landmark. And the third the third landmark is the surface of the body, I think. The surface which separates interiority from the exterior. And I think when we get a sense that, I mean, it obviously doesn't really in real life, the boundaries of the flesh are terribly important and significant surfaces, and it would probably be quite odd if that wasn't a major feature in this sort of horizontal knowledge dimension. And so when knowledge passes that boundary, or is felt to be on the inside, inside of that boundary, then we talk about it differently. We might talk about it being more subjective, or might talk about it being emotional, or felt, or intuitive, or internal in some way. So we mark a distinction in knowledge by making that distinction across the surface of the skin. The terminus point for knowledge, the other end, if you like, of this vertical dimension from the horizon. I'm not sure it is well marked in a sense. It isn't characterized terribly clearly. Obviously, it is a sort of kind of center of one's being, possibly, but it's indistinct. It's not a clear terminus, and I think some uses or understandings of knowing seem to extend beyond and head into the sort of the darkness behind oneself, and different kinds of metaphors come into play at that point, I think. But apart from that, the three key metaphors seem to be this interior-exterior boundary, the point at the extension of one's arms at which we can grasp things, and the far and distant horizon. And those seem to be the three most important and salient points on the horizontal dimension of knowledge. I don't know how long this video is, but perhaps I should just say a few words about the vertical dimension. The vertical dimension, of course, is height, and different kinds of knowledge are understood imaginatively as being arrayed up through this height. And we do talk about higher knowledge, and that's something I've spoke about elsewhere, and higher orders of understanding. But in terms of landmarks, in terms of how it's distinguished, I may be wrong, but I think the only significant landmark in terms of height is the surface of the earth, really, on which we walk. There may be others, but that seems like the most salient, the most obvious. Height is, broadly speaking, undifferentiated. It just goes up and up and up, and to the extent that it stops at the ground. And then that stopping at the ground marks a transition. So the knowledge that we posit as being kind of under the ground, we definitely understand as being different.